Hey guys, tonight we're slipping past the velvet ropes and straight into the private chambers of royalty. Not the polished museum replicas, but the cold, echoing stone rooms where kings and queens actually tried to sleep. Imagine it. High ceilings, no insulation, a fireplace that does more for your imagination than your body heat, and wind that sneaks in like it's got a vendetta. Forget golden bed frames and silk sheets. This is the real thing. You're the monarch tonight, and you're going to try to make it through one medieval winter's night in a frozen castle. You might want to grab an extra blanket because, spoiler alert, you wouldn't survive 5 minutes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is there. I love knowing who else is awake right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air hits your face before you even step through the door. A slow, dry kind of cold. Not the sharp slap of a snowy street, but something older, thicker. It seeps through your skin like smoke through cloth. The stone hallway stretches ahead, lit only by torches and the occasional sputtering oil lamp, the flames dancing like they're just as miserable as you. You wrap your cloak tighter. It's wool, thick, and it itches at your neck, but you'd rather scratch than shiver. Underneath, another layer, linen tunic, and under that, yes, one more layer. That's the medieval approach to heating layers. Lots and lots of them, because in here, fire is decoration. The walls? Stone. The floor? Stone. The ceiling? Vaulted, cold, and echoing with the draft that slinks around like a bored ghost. And this is the royal wing. The king, whoever he is in your mind tonight, has retired for the evening. You follow the sound of murmured voices and quiet footsteps. Servants moving like shadows, their arms full of blankets, coals, and tiny pots of something steaming. You pass through an archway and enter the royal chamber. It's not the grandeur that strikes you, it's the emptiness. The bed is enormous but plain. For thick posts of dark wood, a heavy canopy draped in layered wool and velvet, and a mattress that looks suspiciously like it's been stuffed with horsehair and goose feathers in a sack. There's no mattress factory in the 14th century, just whatever they had, piled until it resembled softness. One candle burns low near the bedside. It's the last light of the night. Not because the king has a problem with electricity, he doesn't know what that is, but because candles are expensive and even royals are careful. You're allowed 1 or 2 per night, maybe more during holidays. Maybe, if the budget allows. At your feet, a fire flickers in the hearth, but it doesn't reach the bed. You can stand right here, a few feet from the flames, and still feel the chill pressing at your shoulders. Heat doesn't fill the room. It huddles near the stones and sulks. You notice something odd, the windows. There's no glass, just wooden shutters. They're closed, but they don't seal anything. You can feel the breeze sneaking through the cracks, carrying the sounds of the night with it. Owls, distant howling wind, the occasional creak of something settling, or maybe something walking. You move to the bed and lift the covers. They're heavy, wool, fur, maybe some linen. There's a slight dampness to them, humidity clinging from the stone. You lie down, and it's not softness that greets you. It's weight. The kind of weight that pins you down and leaves no room for tossing or turning. Beneath the covers, it's slightly warmer. Not warm, just not freezing. Your breath is visible in the air. You exhale slowly and watch the white mist rise like a ghost from your mouth. And now the noises start to matter more. The wind moans softly through the window slits. Somewhere above, a door slams, wood hitting stone like a muffled drumbeat. You hear feet pacing beyond your chamber. A servant? A guard? or something else. This is not a place for sleeping. It's a place for surviving the night. And yet, people lived like this for centuries. Monarchs, nobles, their families, their lovers, their rivals, all sharing this cold, restless air. You shift slightly and hear the bed frame groan. The sound echoes longer than it should. You remember reading somewhere that Henry VIII's chambers were so cold, he had fur-lined curtains drawn around his entire bed, like a mobile cabin. And even then, he slept in socks, gloves, and a hat. Yes, a hat, because you lose most of your body heat through your head. And a royal headache is not just uncomfortable, it's political. But here's the weird part. They thought this was healthy. Medieval physicians believed that sleeping in cold air kept the humors balanced. Too much heat, risk of excess bile. Too warm a room? It could boil the brain vapors, as one 14th century text put it. Charming. So cold? Cold was good for you, even if you woke up with icicles in your mustache. You lie still and try to imagine doing this every single night. No electric blanket, no central heating, just fire, furs, and faith that your immune system won't give up. This was royalty. This was luxury. And yes, it was still freezing. A thud from the hallway makes you flinch. Then a long pause. Then nothing. The candle sputters. This flame shrinks. You pull the covers tighter and close your eyes. But sleep doesn't come easily. Not in this place. Your nose is cold. Your feet are colder. And every gust of wind makes the wooden beams above you creak just slightly, like the castle itself is whispering. But here's the thing. This wasn't just one castle. It was all of them. Edinburgh, Carcassonne, Krakow, Prague, Windsor. The great halls of Europe were magnificent in daylight, but at night they became stone refrigerators. And even kings couldn't escape that simple, brutal truth. When the fire dies down and the doors creak shut, you're just a person in a room of ancient rock, hoping the dark doesn't notice you. Some historians debate whether royal chambers were actually colder than peasant huts. Sure, peasants didn't have fireplaces in every room, but they also didn't live in 20-foot-high stone boxes. Smaller spaces meant more warmth. Tighter families meant shared body heat. Kings, they slept in splendor, alone, distant, and cold. You exhale again. Watch the fog of your breath float up and vanish. The wind sighs through the shutter, and your night has only just begun. You don't move for a while. Maybe because the weight of the covers is too much, or maybe because every time you shift, the bed frame lets out a groan that sounds just a little too human. Whatever the reason, you stay where you are, blinking slowly into the darkness, waiting for your body to remember how to be warm. And then it hits you. This is supposed to be a royal bed. You squint through the shadows, for thick oak posts rise at the corners, carved with vines and lions and the kind of motifs someone once considered intimidating. A heavy canopy droops above your head, beautiful from a distance, but now that you're underneath it, you notice the dust hanging in the folds. Velvet, yes, but not the lush, polished kind. This is rougher, stiff, a layer of formality more than comfort. The mattress creaks beneath you like it's trying to remember the shape of kings long dead. You press a hand against it. It gives only slightly before pushing back with a stubborn, lumpy resistance. No springs, no padding, just straw, hay, or maybe wool stuff sacking. If you're lucky, someone fluffed it with feathers this week. If not, congratulations. You're sleeping on something between a hay bale and a lumpy pancake. And the height? This bed sits high, so high, in fact, you needed a step stool to climb in. That might feel majestic if your knees weren't currently screaming from the cold. But the elevation has a reason. It keeps you away from the floor, where the drafts crawl and rats patrol like tiny, whiskered sentries. That's right, royalty didn't sleep close to the ground. Not because of elegance, but because cold air and vermin are loyal subjects of no one. You shift again and the canopy rustles. A puff of something, a fleck of ash, or maybe just dust, floats down from above and lands on your lip. You wipe it away with the corner of the blanket and try not to think about how many people have sneezed under this same canopy over the centuries. Some royal beds were more than just places to sleep. They were symbols. Louis XIV reportedly had more people watching him get into bed than you have Facebook friends. It was called the Coucher du Roi, and yes, it was a public ritual. He didn't just tuck himself in, he was tucked, observed, bowed to, and blessed, like a weird bedtime press conference. But you get none of that. Just a dark room, a groaning bed frame, and a pillow that feels suspiciously like a rolled-up cloak. You lift the blanket to inspect what's underneath. No crisp white sheets here. Instead, thick woolen layers, maybe a linen lining if you're lucky. And at the bottom, a strange bundle wrapped in cloth. You reach for it and recoil. It's warm. Slightly. Someone placed a heated brick or iron pan there earlier. A luxury, really. It loses heat fast, but for now, it's the only kindness in this chamber. But here's where things get weirder. Beneath the bed, yes, you looked. You notice a small bundle of dried herbs tied with twine. Lavender, rosemary, mugwort. Medieval people didn't trust sleep. Not fully. It was a liminal space, a vulnerable state. So they placed herbs beneath the bed to ward off bad dreams or evil spirits. Sometimes a cross was carved into the bed frame. Sometimes a bell was hung nearby, so faint movements would jingle and alert a servant in case the sleeper was disturbed. And no, not always by thieves. Sometimes by the dead, or demons, or fate itself. Your back itches. Not from fear, well, not just fear, but from the coarse weave of the sheets. The idea of royal linens might conjure images of satin and silk, but silk was rare and heavily taxed. Even monarchs only used it for special occasions. Linen and thick, scratchy wool were far more common in winter chambers. And yes, they itched, so you scratch, slowly, and somewhere a mouse scratches back. You consider how absurd this all is. You, wrapped in what might be half a sheep's worth of fur, lying on a mattress that feels like a sack of laundry, listening to the steady tick of your own heartbeat. This is the peak of comfort in the medieval world. And honestly, it's not the worst part, because at least here you're alone. Back then, privacy was rare. Many royal beds, especially in earlier centuries, were shared. Not romantically, not intimately, but practically. Pages slept nearby. Servants lay on floor mats. Chambermaids hovered within earshot. In some cases, even political allies or guests shared the same sleeping space as a symbol of trust. Imagine trying to sleep while your ambassador snores 2 feet away. Or worse, imagine being the snorer. But tonight, for once, you're alone. Just you, the cold, and a bed built more for appearances than comfort. You wonder if any king ever looked at this thing and thought, I miss the campaign tents, because as uncomfortable as sleeping in a field might have been, at least there, no one expected you to act like a sleeping god. In the distance, something thuds again, probably a servant dropping wood in the hearth outside your chamber. But it echoes louder than it should, like the castle wants you to remember how heavy silence can be. You close your eyes. Try again. Breathe slowly. Let the ache in your shoulders fade. Let the weight of the covers settle. Let the mattress accept your shape. But before sleep takes you, a thought lingers at the edge of your mind. This bed has outlived its owner. Dozens of them, maybe, they died in it, or near it, or while it waited, empty and still. And tonight, it's waiting for you. Not to die, of course, just to rest. But rest comes slowly in a place like this. And the bed doesn't care. It only remembers. You're still not asleep. The bed, the room, the cold, none of it is helping. So you do what any sensible monarch might do in the 14th century. You get up. Or at least you try to. The covers are heavier than expected, like dragging a sheep carcass off your legs. Your joints ache, not from age but from lying stiffly, not moving for fear of breaking the illusion of warmth you've barely built up. The moment you swing your legs off the side, it's like plunging your feet into a snowbank. The stone floor doesn't welcome you, it dares you. Cold crawls up from the soles of your feet like tiny insects made of frost. You stand. You regret it immediately. This is why people dressed for sleep as if preparing to hike the Alps. You shuffle toward a low wooden chest by the fire, your breath puffing visibly in the air. The fire's nearly gone now, just a red glow behind soot-black logs. You kneel, lift the lid, and begin the ritual of layering. First comes the linen nightshirt, thin and long. You're already wearing one. But why stop there? Over that, you drape a wool tunic, soft from age but still smelling faintly of smoke and animal fat. Then you pull on thick woolen hose, not pants, but long knitted tubes tied at the thigh with ribbons or braided cords. Underwear is minimal. Medieval people weren't in the habit of changing into fresh drawers nightly. Hygiene wasn't exactly winning any awards. Next, a fur-lined overrobe, stitched with patches and lined in rabbit or squirrel. The royal tailors would have used ermine for daytime robes. But at night, utility beats status. You suspect the one you're wearing used to belong to a hunting servant. It's warm and slightly too small, which is good, it traps the heat. And finally, the hat. Yes, a sleeping hat. Long, soft, ridiculous-looking by today's standards. Like a sock for your skull. But oh, it works. The kind that curls over one ear. You might chuckle in a modern hotel room, but here it's survival gear. You glance at yourself in the polished bronze mirror. You look like a traveling onion. So many layers, all mashed together, none of them flattering. But none of this is about fashion. It's about not freezing to death in your own bedchamber. Because castles weren't designed for warmth, they were designed for defense. Thick stone walls kept out enemies, not wind. Narrow windows kept arrows from flying in, but also kept the sun from warming anything. And ceilings? The higher they were, the colder the air sat, like a cloud of discomfort. Medieval architects never considered insulation. If anything, they actively avoided it. A cozy room was a smoky room. A smoky room was a health hazard, or so they believed. So cold became the default. Even the Palace of Versailles, centuries later, was described as uninhabitably frigid in winter. Imagine what earlier kings endured. You slip on a pair of soft leather slippers, lined with more wool, and step lightly back toward the bed. Each footfall sounds like a warning to yourself. Don't forget where you are. But before you climb back in, something catches your eye. The brazier, a small metal basin, placed near the bed, filled with glowing coals. You walk over and extend a hand. It's not heat you feel, but the idea of heat, a memory of it. The coals are dying. They always do. You could call a servant to stoke it again. But it's late, and besides, you're trying to convince yourself this is fine, that you're warm enough. And then there it is, that deep, bone-level shiver, the kind that makes you instinctively hug yourself. Your teeth clack together once before you clamp your jaw. You consider the wine. It's still on the side table, a cup of spiced red, long since cooled. You sip it anyway. The flavor's rich with clove and cinnamon, but it's the wormwood that lingers. A medieval sedative, bitter, metallic, sleep's best chance. Now layered like a medieval lasagna, you return to bed. The mattress creaks, the covers sigh, and you lie still, looking up at the canopy once more. It doesn't seem so regal now, just heavy. And this is what you think about: how many monarchs died of pneumonia, or of consumption, which could have been tuberculosis, or just what happens when your immune system gives up after 5 winters of bone-deep cold. There's a famous case: Edward the Confessor, King of England in the 11th century. Chronic illness, cold chills. He likely spent his final nights not in glory, but wrapped in furs, shaking, while prayers were whispered around him. And he wasn't alone. Many rulers kept bed companions, not for romance, but for body heat. Sleeping alone was dangerous. Dangerous, as in, this could kill you if no one else is nearby to warm the space. Imagine needing a sleep buddy just to make it to morning. Some historians argue that the idea of luxury sleep is a modern concept. That for most of human history, sleep was functional, strategic, and always slightly uncomfortable. Royals weren't exempt. In fact, their cold, lofty chambers may have made them the most uncomfortable of all. You pull the covers tighter and exhale slowly. You think of all those layers: the fur, the wool, the linen, the ridiculous hat. You're still cold. And now you understand something. Truly, why the king's expression in so many portraits is grim. You lie still, eyes open in the dark. First, it's just silence. But silence in a medieval castle is never truly silent. The sounds creep in gradually, soft, small, easily missed by someone unfamiliar. But you're a king. You've slept in this chamber 100 nights. You know every creak. And tonight, they're all louder than usual. From the rafters above, a soft scratching. Mice or perhaps a rat. You imagine it crawling along the beam, nose twitching in search of crumbs. The cold doesn't deter them. They're used to it. They've lived in these walls longer than you have. Somewhere beyond the heavy oak door, distant footsteps. Slow, hesitant. A servant making rounds with a candle? Or just another guest in this stone labyrinth of halls? It echoes too long. Footsteps that slow aren't casual. Then, the whistle of wind. That small window closed earlier must have shifted. The old iron latch can't hold it firm. Now it lets in a moan, like someone sighing endlessly just outside your room. The chill returns instantly, crawling across the blankets like a ghost. You hear the fire pop, sending a single ember upward. A tiny red star that vanishes before it lands. There's a smell, too, not unpleasant. Old wool, wood smoke, melted tallow from the nearly dead candle. But then comes the sound you dread most. The stone walls breathing. Not literally, of course, but in the deep of night, when temperatures shift and humidity condenses, the old blocks creak, snap, settle. A noise like ice breaking beneath your feet. A reminder that the castle is not asleep, only waiting. You pull the covers up to your chin. In stories, kings sleep soundly in velvet beds, guarded by knights and comforted by firelight. But here, in this very real room, there's only you and the stone. Cold, heavy, unforgiving. It's easy to believe that something waits in the darkness. Many nobles believed that spirits roamed the halls at night, especially in winter. The long hours of darkness were thought to blur the line between the waking and spirit worlds. Stories tell of ghosts seen near hearths, of whispers echoing through freezing chambers. Some kings ordered bells tied to their bedposts to scare away bad dreams or alert the guards if spirits stirred. Others placed small protective charms under their pillows, a sprig of rosemary or a cross made of straw. You don't know if they worked, but tonight, as the walls creak again, You wish you had one. You glance toward the far wall. In the darkness, shadows take shape. That tapestry? You know it's of St. George. But tonight it looks like a figure watching. The chair by the hearth? Empty but not quite. A trick of the candlelight? Or something else? The mind wanders in the cold. Medieval sleep was not deep, not uninterrupted. In fact, people often slept in two distinct phases. First sleep and second sleep. They'd wake for an hour or two between to pray, think, or talk. Maybe it was because of the dark. Or maybe it was because sleep never came easy when your bedroom was a refrigerator. You wonder which sleep this is, and if you'll ever reach the second one. Another sound, this one right outside your door. You freeze. The hairs on your arms rise. But it's only the iron latch shifting, wood contracting in the cold. Still, your eyes remain locked on the door for a full minute. You start to understand why insomnia wasn't considered a sickness back then. It was considered ordinary, logical, a reaction to everything you're now experiencing. The cold, the noise, the fear. Sleep in this place isn't a refuge. It's a challenge, an ordeal, something to survive. You pull the covers tighter, curl inward. You whisper an old prayer, not because you're devout, but because you're desperate. Not even for safety, just for warmth. And still, the night stretches on. You don't remember falling asleep. You only know that when your eyes open, it's still dark. For a long moment, you wonder if it's still night. But then you hear it. A distant clatter of metal, servants stirring, buckets being filled, and someone stumbling over a loose stone on the stairwell. It's morning technically. You sit up, slowly. Every joint protests. Your breath fogs in front of your face. The fire in the hearth is down to its final embers. Just orange dust and a few glowing cracks in a piece of half-burned oak. You didn't dream. Or if you did, your body didn't have the energy to remember. As your feet touch the cold flagstone floor, a shock races up your spine. No rugs. Not here. No slippers either. You kick into the wool socks left by your bed. Stiff. Damp at the toe. Still better than bare feet. Your first steps of the day feel like punishment. The air is so cold your nose stings. You keep one blanket around your shoulders as you shuffle toward the shuttered window. Opening it lets in more cold, yes, but you have to know what time it is. The answer? Barely dawn. Medieval castles weren't designed to let in morning light. They were built to keep everything out, including the sun. Outside, the sky is gray. No sunrise colors, just mist and frost hanging in the bare trees. Below in the courtyard, a few servants shovel snow into neat piles. A boy is hauling firewood with a sled that squeaks horribly on every cobblestone. This is a royal morning. No trumpets, no fanfare, just labor, silence, and the ache of cold deep in your bones. Now, the question comes, how will you get warm? You don't have a thermostat. You don't have a bath. Even tea is out of the question unless someone lights the hearth again and boils water, which could take hours. So you do what royalty often did. Layer up and wait. One tunic over another, then a thick wool surcoat, a hat indoors even, and still the cold clings to your skin like something alive. You remember the Queen of Castile who, it was said, once slept wrapped in fox pelts, then stuffed straw between them for extra insulation. Some called it genius, others called it madness, but nobody mocked her in winter. A knock at your door. The steward enters with a jug of thin ale and a plate of bread so hard it could be used as a weapon. You nod your thanks, say nothing. Speaking feels like too much effort this early in the cold. He bows, lingers for a moment, then dares to speak. My lord, the chapel bell will sound within the hour. You nod again. That means mass. No skipping it, not for nobles. Even kings went to morning service, partially out of piety, mostly to remind everyone who was in charge. As he leaves, you sip the ale. It's nearly frozen, but it's wet, and it soothes your cracked lips. Outside, the bell rings, a deep, solemn note, and with it, the castle begins to truly wake. Downstairs, kitchen maids begin crushing onions and turnips. A guard sneezes. Somewhere, a dog barks exactly once. It's not much, but it's movement. Life. You start to feel your fingers again. And with that, you remember the day ahead. A council meeting. Letters to dictate. A dispute over land to settle. Perhaps even a visit from a neighboring noble, which means smiling through a long meal while your nose drips and your teeth chatter. They never show that in the paintings, do they? They show you as regal, powerful, immaculate in fur-lined robes. Not the reality of you now, half frozen, half awake, chewing bread with no teeth on one side. Even kings start their mornings like this. The truth is, castles didn't just hold people. They held weather, drafts, shadows, echoes. You didn't conquer the cold. You lived with it. You adapted, or you died. You step back from the window and wrap the blanket tighter around your chest. The tapestry on the wall flutters slightly, not from wind, but from movement on the other side. A servant hurrying past, no doubt, clutching coal in her apron. She doesn't knock. She knows her place. You know yours. And both of you are cold. But in a strange way, that cold connects you. A king and his lowest servant, each learning each day to survive the same stone womb. Now the fire must be relit. The day must begin. There is no warmth waiting. Only the slow build of heat from movement, from duty, from pretending not to shiver. You stand, you breathe deep, and you move forward not because you're ready, but because there's no other option. Just another morning in your frozen throne. The fire's still out, but she arrives before you can summon anyone. A short figure in a brown will curdle, hood up, face flushed from the stairs. You don't know her name. Royals rarely do, but she knows everything about you. How long you sleep, how many times you turn in the night, where you sweat, where you freeze, where you bleed. She curtsies. You nod. Then she gets to work. The chambermaid doesn't light the fire first. That would be foolish. The stone is too cold, and the coals need coaxing. Instead, she begins the ritual of layering, like a priestess of warmth. First, she places warmed bricks, wrapped in cloth, under your chair. You never see where she gets them. Somehow, they're always ready. Heated in the scullery, perhaps. Stacked beside the cook fires overnight. They smell faintly of ash and stew. You don't care. They're hot. Your toes find them instantly. Bliss. She murmurs something, maybe a prayer, maybe just a list of tasks, and begins spreading goat pelts across the bed, the bench, and your shoulders. They're scratchy, but they trap heat. One goes around your neck like a living scarf. Another she lays across your lap with the care of a burial shroud. She knows how to build warmth from nothing. While she works, you hear the castle shift. Wooden beams creak as they expand. Water drips in some hidden pipe. Distant doors groan open and slam shut. Life beginning as it always does, grudgingly. The chambermaid doesn't flinch at any of it. She's done this every winter since she was 12. Learned from the women before her. Their names are forgotten, but their tricks live on. She lifts the hearth screen, nudges the ashes, and feeds in dried pine cones, not logs. You raise an eyebrow. She sees it but doesn't explain. Instead, the cones catch fast, oily, flaring. Then comes straw, then twigs, then finally wood. And the fire lives again. You're still cold, but less so. And in the medieval world, less cold is a luxury. Now she turns to your garments. They're half frozen on the hook where you left them last night. She sets them near the fire to thaw. Not too close, they might scorch. She's done this before. She hands you a small cloth bag. You recognize it. Rosemary and cloves, sewn into linen. You rub it between your fingers. It smells like heat, like effort, like something alive. She bows again, still silent, and turns to leave. But before she does, you catch her eye. "You ever warm up properly?" you ask. She hesitates, smiles, just a bit. "Only when we're done serving," she says. Then she's gone. It's a detail no one writes down. The chambermaid's day starts in the cold and ends in it. She warms others, not herself. She knows every shortcut to heat that doesn't cost money, because in a castle, firewood is rationed, even for royals. Yes, you're a king or a noble or at least someone dressed like one. But she's the one who keeps you alive. The fire crackles now. You can feel your knuckles again. You wrap your arms in fur and glance toward the door. It's ajar just slightly, enough for the draft to sneak in again. You rise, close it fully, and return to the fire. She'll be back later, maybe with warm water or a lemon if the cook's feeling generous. You think of her hands, red, cracked, moving like clockwork through 100 chambers. And you wonder, how many kings owe their mornings to fingers like hers? But you won't say it aloud. Instead, you sit. The bricks under your feet are cooling already. The fire hisses as it meets damp bark. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel like you could go back to sleep. But then footsteps, another knock, and the day begins again. It doesn't matter how highborn you are. You're still freezing. And that's not some poetic metaphor. It's physics. Stone doesn't love you. You walk slowly through the corridor now, wrapped in pelts, trailing the scent of clove, and each step echoes. The walls are thick, sure, defensible, majestic even, but they suck in warmth like a black hole in a ball gown. You pass a tapestry, faded saints stabbing faded dragons, and reach out, not for comfort, for insulation, because even these woolen hangings, meant to trap heat, feel like they've given up. They hang there, limp and stiff, like cold breath caught in time. Here's the thing no one told you. Medieval castles were never meant to be cozy. They were designed to defend, not to comfort. Built with thick walls and narrow windows to resist invaders, not winter. Warmth was an afterthought, a risky luxury. Even in the royal chambers, heat is borrowed, not kept. Fireplaces? Yes, but most were shallow, drafty, and wildly inefficient. Chimneys? A relatively new invention in many parts of Europe, especially in the early Middle Ages. Before that, smoke just drifted out through holes in the roof. Or didn't. You remember last night's dinner. Venison stew, dark bread, a goblet of watered wine. You felt regal, swaddled in candlelight. Now, in the dawn gloom, that same hall is a cavern of frost. Your breath fogs the air in front of you, like a ghost too tired to haunt. The servants have already started opening shutters. You wish they hadn't. The morning wind slips through the arrow slits like a petty thief. It whispers, "You'll never be warm again," and you believe it. The stone floor beneath your boots is damp, always damp. Water from underground, water from yesterday's storm, water from the sheer indifference of 14th century architecture. You reach the next chamber, private one. This would be a luxury in any other life. Inside, a larger hearth, tapestries triple thick, a brazier with iron legs, and still it's cold enough to see your breath. Here's a strange fact. Even royalty used to wear hats to bed. thick ones, sometimes with ear flaps. You chuckle at the image, yourself, crowned in wool like some deranged Christmas pudding. And socks, not cotton, wool, felted, sometimes lined with squirrel fur. Anything to keep toes from going black in the night. There's a rumor you once heard, whispered by a page in a stable. A lord lost 3 toes just from sleeping too close to the outer wall. Exaggerated? Maybe, but you'd believe it now. That wall beside you is a glacier in disguise. Some castles tried clever things, underfloor heating systems called hypocausts, adapted from Roman techniques. But they were rare, expensive, and mostly confined to bathhouses or southern climates. Others used window shutters within shutters, double doors, straw stuffed into gaps, even carpets on the walls. You've seen it all. It's not enough. A historical debate still lingers. Did medieval architects ever really understand thermal efficiency? Some scholars say yes, that certain castles were marvels of passive heat retention, oriented to catch the southern sun, with chimneys placed to optimize draw. Others argue no, that warmth was never the point. Fear was, status was, and so you sit, once more, in a grand stone room with ceilings that mock your size and walls that whisper of conquest, while your toes beg for a goat. Modern castles, of course, are renovated. They have radiators, discreet vents, cozy cafes inside the old armories. You've seen the brochures, but not this one, not today. You sigh. The fire in the brazier crackles faintly. The coals are stubborn. Someone enters. Another servant, cheeks red, arms full of linen. Your cloak, she says, warmed, as requested. You take it. It steams a little in your hands. A fleeting luxury. She glances at your shivering fingers. The cloister wing is warmer, she says. Sun hits it first. You nod, rising. She curtsies. Another ghost in the endless ballet of survival. You head for the cloister, half hoping the sun has remembered you. But even as you walk, in a castle built for war, winter always wins. You'd think your bed, your royal, carved, silk-draped, four-poster bed, would be a sanctuary. It's not. Tonight, you eye it like a trap. The mattress is stuffed with straw, maybe feathers if you're lucky. It smells faintly of lavender, less faintly of old sweat and the kind of damp that creeps up from the stones and never really leaves. The sheets are linen, expensive, yes, but still coarse by modern standards. Your skin snags on them like burrs on cloth. You run your hand along the canopy, thick velvet meant to trap heat. It also traps insects and lice, and the kind of crawling thing that scurries in darkness and doesn't care that you're king. You pull back the layers slowly, one by one. Blanket, quilt, fur, quilt again. This is not for comfort. This is for survival. You lower yourself in. The bed sags slightly under your weight, and the frame creaks. Loud, groaning, like a ship listing in wind. It's a familiar noise. You've heard it during storms. You've heard it when you were sick. You've heard it during lovemaking and during death. Because here's the truth no one embroidered onto the tapestries. Your bed is also where people die, sometimes peacefully, but not always. You remember the story of King Charles VI of France, Charles the Mad. They called him. He believed he was made of glass, slept wrapped in thick cloth so he wouldn't shatter in the night. He once refused to move for hours, fearing he'd break. Or King Edward II, murdered in his bed, if you believe the more brutal versions. A hot poker, they say. Let's just say his sleep was disturbed. Beds weren't private in medieval castles. Not really. Servants might sleep nearby. Sometimes even in the same room, just separated by curtains or thin walls, if there were walls at all. Privacy, a modern invention. Even your canopy is more symbolic than useful. The heavy curtains are drawn shut now, a cocoon of darkness, but light still leaks through. And sound, always sound. Tonight, it's the wind, and that awful thump. You lie still, hoping it was nothing, but you know better, because medieval beds weren't just uncomfortable, they were dangerous. Infestations, bedbugs, fleas, and worse, mice, rats, creatures drawn to warmth, to crumbs, to the scent of you. Some nobles kept bed warmers, metal pans filled with hot coals, slipped under the blankets before sleep. But once your cousin left hers in too long. She didn't wake up. There are records, scattered, inconsistent, but chilling, of fires started in royal bedchambers, of noble women burned, of sheets catching like tinder. You curl tighter under the covers, and the cold finds you anyway. You breathe through your nose carefully. The air smells of old smoke and something else. Tallow, maybe, or mold. It's hard to tell in the dark. The mattress shifts slightly. Not from you. You freeze. Another rumor surfaces. One from your childhood, told in whispers under the table. Never sleep on a royal bed too long. It remembers the last body that died there. You roll over quickly, shaking it off. Your fingers brush the rosary tucked under your pillow. You don't remember putting it there. A servant must have done it. Or a nurse. Or someone who believes in spirits. You clutch it anyway, just in case. Some historians argue that noble beds were status objects first and places to sleep second. They were elevated not just to avoid drafts, but also to literally lift you above the common, dirty air. Others say they were designed for show, not function. Ornate carvings, gilded posts, linen dyed with crushed beetles and laced with gold thread. But what's the point of silk when you wake up blue with cold? Your foot brushes something. It's just the fur. You hope. You close your eyes, then open them again. Because in the Middle Ages, even sleep was political. Even the bed was a battlefield. Who you slept with, who you let into your chamber, who witnessed your rising and your lying down. It all mattered. There were rules. There were watchers. Sometimes there were spies. You once heard that Queen Isabella of France had a servant who slept upright in a wooden chair all night, watching her. Not for safety, for surveillance. That servant died young. Insomnia, they said. You shift under the covers. The bed creaks again. This time you swear it groaned your name, but you don't move, because even though your bones ache, your breath fogs, and your mind plays tricks in the half-dark, you know something worse. This is the safest bed in the castle, and you still might not survive it. You wake before dawn, not that you were ever fully asleep, just suspended there, in the hollow between wakefulness and dreams, like a whisper stuck in your throat. Your breath rises in a faint mist above your face. Curls, disappears, curls again. A cruel reminder, yes, it's still freezing. Yes, you're still alive. And no, this castle was never designed to keep you warm, just to keep you in. A wind creeps through the wall again. There's no window open. There's barely glass in this century. But somehow the cold still slithers in, bold and shapeless, slipping between the stones like a ghost hunting for warmth. They call these drafts, but that's a generous name, because a draft in a medieval castle isn't just a breeze. It's a presence. It chills the water in your wash basin. It ices the ink in your writing desk. It whistles low when no one's moving, like someone breathing just behind your ear. You remember what the nursemaid used to say, "Never turn your back to a draft. That's how fevers find you." And she wasn't wrong, because once your uncle caught a chill, just a small one. He laughed about it. Then he coughed once, twice, then bled from the gums for a week. gone before the priest even arrived. No one called it pneumonia. They called it castle rot. Old stones are beautiful, romantic, noble. They're also porous. Cold lives in them like a squatter, refusing to leave even in summer. And in winter, it becomes something else, something malevolent. So they lined the walls with tapestries, huge woolen things threaded with stories, mythical beasts, saints with golden halos, and always battles. Not for decoration, for insulation, but the draft still came. And then there were the curses. You've heard the rumors that your castle is cursed because the foundations were laid over a pagan shrine, that one of your ancestors stole holy relics from a monastery and hid them inside the walls, that the castle watches back. There's a patch of frost that never melts, even when you set a brazier beside it, a shadow that falls the wrong way near the north tower, a soft knocking you hear at the same hour every night. 3 times. Always 3. You once asked your steward about it. He went pale, told you it was the wind, then quietly left court the next morning and never came back. You shift on your cot, not your throne, not your banquet chair, but your cot because your royal bedchamber was too cold this winter, and now you sleep in a smaller room, tucked between the kitchens and the chapel. Humbling, isn't it? A king in a servant's bed, but warmer, just barely. Your fingers trace the wooden wall. It's rough, splintered. It was never meant to be touched by royal hands. There's a crack in the paneling where someone once carved a symbol. You can barely see it now, but you remember. A circle, 3 arrows pointing inward, a mark to ward off bad air, because they didn't just fear the cold. They feared miasma, foul air, corrupted breath, invisible poisons rising from swamps, rot, or sin. You once had a physician who told you to burn juniper in every room to cleanse the air. It helped a little, smelled like a forest fire married a candle shop. But he died too, fell from the parapet, or jumped. You still don't know, and you never go near that corner of the wall. Some say curses in castles aren't real, just stories, superstition. But why does every cold gust feel like a finger tapping your neck? Why does the fire always go out right before something creaks? Why do you always wake at 3:12 a.m.? No earlier, no later, always then. A servant once tried to hang garlic near your chamber door. You had them flogged, but some nights you wish you hadn't, because just yesterday when you passed through the east wing you saw something new, something small, tied with black twine under the archway. You pretended not to notice, but someone's still trying to protect you. That's the thing about curses. You don't have to believe in them for them to follow you. They just need one open door, one cold wind, one forgotten name. And tonight, as the wind howls again, closer now, you wonder if your name is next. You sit upright in bed. The cold presses against your chest like a hand. No, like a memory, because somewhere in the walls of this castle, 100 other kings have breathed, slept, prayed, and cursed just like you. Some of them never woke up. You wake not with sunlight, but with the sound of coughing. Yours, a sharp, dry bark that echoes embarrassingly across stone and wood. It's the kind of cough that feels pulled from the base of your spine, ancient and irritated, as if something in your lungs resents the fact that you keep insisting on breathing in this godforsaken draft box you call a castle. Your throat feels like it's been lined with parchment, or worse, with salt. You stretch your jaw and taste something metallic. Blood? No, just iron from the water basin. Again. Welcome to your morning routine. There are no alarm clocks, no birds chirping softly outside stained glass windows, no gentle wake-up playlist. Instead, It's just you, the rising panic that your lungs are failing, and the stench of whatever died in the chimney 2 winters ago. You swing your legs off the cot, wincing as your bare feet touch the icy floor. You promised yourself you'd have rugs brought in months ago, but that would require 2 things: servants who aren't terrified of this wing, and rugs that haven't already been eaten by mice. Instead, you shuffle, quietly, the king of all this, reduced to a cautious shuffler. And the taste in your mouth? Think old garlic mixed with fear. It's no wonder medieval royalty were obsessed with clove-studded oranges and rinsing with vinegar. Anything to mask the miasma pouring from their own faces. You reach for your cup, carved horn, not silver anymore, because silver conducts cold too well in winter, and swish your mouth with yesterday's boiled water. It's gone lukewarm in the worst way, like something exhaled in it. You spit into the chamber pot and catch a glimpse of yourself in the warped mirror hung by the door. Who is that? Your eyes are pinked at the edges, lashes frosted with sleep. A faint smudge of soot under your cheek from where your face drifted too close to the dying fire. No crown, no robes, just a tunic, half open, and skin gone blotchy from cold and uneven sleep. You are glorious. You chuckle and your breath fogs the mirror. It's not all indignity, though. The mornings do come with a rhythm, rituals, things that help you believe you're not just a sack of bones trapped in a haunted freezer. A boy knocks at the door, soft, always 3 times, and you grunt because talking hurts. He opens it and leaves a bundle of linen by the hearth. Warmed, slightly, bless his soul. Probably bribed the kitchen maid for access to the coals. You nod and he disappears like a ghost. No eye contact. They say you cursed a stable boy once just by looking at him when you were sick. You didn't, but you didn't uncurse him either. You wrap yourself in the linen and begin what passes for hygiene. There's no soap. Not really. You rub your teeth with a wool cloth dipped in wine, then chew on a bit of parsley that's clearly on its last legs. A kind of ancient breath mint, though minty is generous. Then the comb. Wooden. Thorny. Possibly cursed. You run it through your tangled hair, and it pulls at everything: your scalp, your sanity, your will to live. You count 8 broken strands in the comb's teeth. A new record. Kings should not shed like sick cats. You smell your underarms. Yeah, we'll skip the details on that one. Eventually, you're dressed. Your clothes are heavy. Wool, linen, more wool. Layer upon layer until you feel like a stuffed goose. You walk with the grace of a wrapped mummy. The crown goes on last. Not the bejeweled one, but the one made of felt and fur, because frostbite on the scalp is no joke. Somewhere down the hallway, bells ring. Time for morning mass. Or maybe it's a funeral. Same difference. But you pause, because something has changed. The cold isn't just physical anymore. Presses. It listens. You glance at the window slit. Frost traces the edges in twisting patterns. Almost letters. Almost. You used to think the cold was just nature, the absence of heat. But now you're not so sure. Because the colder it gets, the more you dream. And the dreams are always of the same man. He wears a crown of ice. He says your name backwards. He reaches for you over and over, but never touches. When you told your chaplain, he offered holy water and confessed on your behalf. Then he left court and moved to a monastery in Sicily. You haven't told anyone since. But the dreams continue. And this morning, as you step into the hallway, the chill follows you like a second skin. You wonder how many kings before you felt it, and how many tried to tell someone, and how many vanished. So you straighten your posture. You are king. You will not flinch at a chill, no matter how it whispers. You descend the stairs. Each step echoes. And somewhere behind you, something echoes too. But there is no one there. You don't remember when the dread started. Maybe it was the second winter, or the third. After so many nights of frozen air and hollow silence, your bed stopped feeling like a sanctuary. It became something else. Place of waiting, of bracing, of forgetting how to sleep altogether. You stand at the doorway now, staring at it. The royal bed, a towering thing carved from black oak, canopied and curtained, draped in damask and fur and lace. It's the kind of bed a lesser noble would weep over, gasping at its grandeur. But to you, it's a coffin, and not even a warm one. The furs piled atop it are heavy, yes, but they've long since lost their warmth. They suck in the cold like sponges. When you crawl beneath them, it's like sinking into the stomach of some gluttonous beast, one that feeds not on flesh but on comfort. And worse, it remembers. Every time you return to it, the cold seems to deepen, as if the mattress holds a grudge, as if it's counting the hours you spent away and punishing you for daring to leave. Tonight, like all nights, you hesitate before approaching. Part of you still thinks, maybe I could sleep somewhere else. The chapel? The stables? But you're the king, and kings don't sleep in hay. So you perform the ritual. First, the embers. You crouch by the fireplace, poking at the half-dead coals with a wrought iron prod shaped like a lion's fang. You add 2 logs, only 2. Wood is precious, even for you. Forests aren't infinite, and wars don't pay for themselves. You blow gently until a spark reignites. It offers no real heat, just enough to remind you that warmth exists, that it's possible. Then the talisman. You reach beneath the pillow and feel for the little bundle of wax and wool. It's tied with human hair, your own, and infused with crushed juniper and vinegar. A charm meant to ward off chills, both natural and supernatural. You don't know if it works, but ever since you started using it, the dreams have changed. Not gone, just shifted. The man with the crown of ice doesn't speak anymore. He watches. You shiver. You shake the fur coverlets loose, trying to fluff them without breathing in too much dust. One of them is fox. One is bear. One might be something older. You think of those paintings in the gallery. Royals with frozen noses and hands tucked under their arms, eyes wide and tired. They don't smile. Nobody smiles in royal portraits. Not because of solemnity, because they were freezing. This is the truth nobody writes down in the illuminated manuscripts. Beds were not places of rest. They were battlegrounds, a duel between body heat and frost, between the mind and its own shadows. So you climb in, you lie flat, and wait. There is no instant warmth, no gentle cocooning. The bed drinks the heat from your limbs with greedy speed. Feels like the grave. You stare at the canopy overhead. The embroidered dragons seem to twitch in the low light. You remember what your nurse once said, "Don't let your soul float too far when you sleep, my lord. The cold hunts it." She was hanged for witchcraft a year later. You close your eyes and think of spring, of the single glorious night when you slept in a chamber that still had sunlight in it, of the time a consort slipped into bed with you and pressed their cheek to your back, whispering a joke that made you laugh in the dark. They're gone now, poison or exile. You forget which. You roll to one side. The mattress is uneven, lumpy in places that seem to move when you're not looking. A breeze kisses your earlobe, even though the window has been bolted since Michaelmas. That's new. You pretend not to notice. And then, something shifts. A sound. Not loud, but wrong. Like the rustle of a dress where no person stands. Or the sigh of someone slipping under the covers beside you. You freeze. No breath. No movement. Just the thump of your heart. a desperate drum in a cathedral of frost. You open one eye, there's nothing there, but the weight beside you tells another story. The mattress dips, slowly, impossibly, as if someone is lying down next to you, not touching, just watching, breathing. Their breath doesn't fog the air. You say nothing. You don't even blink. You've learned that if you acknowledge it, it stays longer. So you wait. Eventually, minutes or hours, the weight lifts. The cold remains. You press your fingers together, trying to feel something human. Some heat. It doesn't come. The curse of the cold bed. They call it in the northern counties. Nobles who freeze in their sleep, found with eyes wide and mouths agape. No wounds, just ice on their lashes and horror in their gaze. You once mocked the tales. Now you pray you're not next. You pull the covers tighter, whisper a joke to yourself. Something about how this is still better than sharing a bed with your cousin's kids. And close your eyes. You sleep, but only barely. And behind your dreams, something walks along the canopy beams, pacing, waiting. There's a reason royal nightshirts were made thick. Not just for warmth, though that was part of it. Wool, linen, even fine rabbit-lined silk if you were vain enough to demand it. But the real reason, they had to hide things. Weapons, scars, secrets. You learned that young. When you were 7, you crept into your father's chamber during a thunderstorm, clutching a stuffed hawk sewn with blue buttons. He didn't hear you enter, too busy whispering to a man you'd never seen before, thin, pale, robed in black. When he turned, the man vanished into shadow like a puff of dust. Your father's hand shot beneath his nightshirt. You saw the hilt before anything else. A curved dagger, etched with green runes that pulsed like breath. You never asked about it. But from that night on, you understood, kings don't truly sleep. They wait with eyes closed and blades drawn. So now, as you dress for bed alone, you follow the ritual. The shirt is thick, white, though it never stays white long. The inner seams are padded with moleskin. The left sleeve is slightly looser to allow quick access to the blade you keep beneath your pillow. You run a hand along the hem. Inside it, sewn so finely no maid would dare notice, is a thread of wire. Silver, if anyone asks, but it's not. It's iron, cold-forged, blessed, ready, cuts ghosts. Or so the apothecary swore, before his tongue turned black from speaking too much truth. You pull the nightshirt over your head. It smells faintly of smoke and lavender. The scent of a fire long dead and flowers buried too deep to bloom again. Your crown rests on a table near the window. Even now, it glints in the candlelight. You consider moving it farther away out of sight, but you don't. You want it close. If something comes for you tonight, let it know who it faces. Outside, the castle settles. A distant creak. Stone against iron. Footsteps in the snow or just rats between the walls. You light the final candle. It's shaped like a kneeling knight, head bowed, sword buried in the floor. You don't know who made it. It was here when you inherited the chamber. You've always lit it last. A small superstition. This flame is blue, like a winter star. You sit on the edge of the bed, dagger in hand. The same one your father once drew. The same green runes. The same hum of something not quite metal in your palm. It's older than you, maybe older than the bed. Some nights you think it whispers. You tuck it beneath the pillow, but not far. Just enough to make it look hidden. If anything reaches for you tonight, you want it to bleed. Because here's the truth no scribe dares ink. A royal bedroom is not a place of love or dreams. It's a battlefield, and every monarch must choose their armor. You lie back. The bed greets you like an old rival. Cold, familiar, quietly cruel. Above, the canopy watches. Beneath, the mattress waits. And within your fist, the hilt of the dagger thrums softly, like a heartbeat not your own. The hearth in your chamber has been roaring for hours. 3 logs deep, birch, split and dried since last autumn. A servant once said the crackle of birch keeps away the moaning dead. You never corrected him. Some beliefs deserve to live, even if they aren't true. But tonight, like every night, you sit as far from the fire as possible. Because you've learned something odd. The closer you are to the flames, the louder they become. You've never told anyone. It began during your 13th winter. You were sick, too weak to rise from bed. The fire burned non-stop for 6 days, and on the 5th night, just as the snow outside was swallowing the last color from the windows, you heard a voice. Not a loud one, just a whisper behind the flames. Lie still. We remember. You sat up, drenched in sweat, staring into the embers. Nothing, but the air had shifted. Since then, you've kept the hearth going because to let it die would feel like surrender, but you never sit near it. Not anymore. You step closer now, though only to check the logs. A metal poker rests beside the stone lip, ornate and cold. The tip hisses as you prod a crackling chunk deeper into the heart of the blaze. The flames shift, blue for a moment, then orange again. You tell yourself it's nothing, just heat and ash, but you still glance over your shoulder, just in case the shadow in the corner moved. Because warmth doesn't bring safety in a castle like this. You remember a story from your uncle. One winter, a young prince had his entire bedchamber lined with wool tapestries and fire basins, 4 at once. So hot, the servants nearly collapsed tending them. But still, the prince died in his sleep, froze solid, fingers black, lips blue. The hearth had burned all night. No one could explain it. Maybe it wasn't the cold. Your uncle had muttered once, after a few too many sips of heated wine. Maybe it was something that comes with the cold. There's never been an answer. But the fire, you've learned to respect it like an enemy that smiles. You return to the bed, still dressed, still alert. The sheets are warm, thanks to the stone brick you ordered heated and wrapped earlier. It sits at your feet like a loyal hound, wrapped in cloth that smells of pepper and sage. The comfort is brief, because even with all your precautions, your breath still curls in the air. And your toes, despite wool socks and heated bricks, ache like old men. It's not just about warmth, is it? It's about the chill that finds you anyway. Through stone, through fur, through flesh. The kind of cold that isn't temperature at all. You hear the fire pop behind you, another log settling, or something whispering through the flue. You think of the kings before you. How many of them listened to these same cracks and sparks? How many prayed the fire would be enough? It never was. You once found a parchment tucked in an old Bible. No name, just a sentence scrawled in frantic ink. I burned my books, my bed, my hands, and still it crept in. You kept it. It's folded in the lining of your nightstand drawer. Because sometimes, on nights like this, when even the fire can't drown out the voices, it's nice to know someone else heard them too. Now the logs are low. The room has quieted. But outside, the wind has started again. Soft at first, then higher, keening against the glass like a mother wailing for children long lost. You whisper a short prayer, not because you believe in the gods, but because it's polite to acknowledge anything that might be listening. And then you close your eyes. You pretend to sleep, because if they think you're truly asleep, they might come closer. And that's when you'll know if the fire was ever enough. Spoiler, it never is. You wake up without realizing you fell asleep. There's no memory of drifting off. One moment, you were staring at the shadow behind the wardrobe. The next, you're blinking into blackness. Not silence, just blackness. Because the walls are speaking again. First, it sounds like wind. But you've lived in this castle long enough to tell the difference. Wind is chaotic, crude. It howls, sighs, sometimes even hums through the cracks in the stone. But this is something else. This has rhythm. This repeats. You sit up slowly, careful not to rustle the covers too much. Somewhere down the hall, a servant sleeps on a straw mat outside your door. You'd hate to wake him, not because you care about his sleep, but because you might have to explain why you're up again. And some things aren't worth putting into words. You slip your feet into the fur-lined slippers left by your bedside and shuffle to the door. You don't need a candle. The castle knows you. You know it. Your hand finds the latch in the dark like it's muscle memory. A quick twist. The door doesn't creak. Not anymore. You had the hinges oiled after the fourth time you opened it to find no one there, but footprints in the frost. You step into the hallway. Still cold. Always cold. But tonight, the chill doesn't press. It pulls. As if something down the hall wants you to follow. And you do. Because this isn't the first time the East Tower has whispered your name. You don't hear it clearly. Not like in stories, where ghosts wail in syllables and weep out confessions. This is different. It's more like a tug on your spine, like someone gently blowing on the flame of your thoughts. You reach the staircase that winds upward. Spiral, narrow, and old. The kind of old where the stones don't just groan underfoot. They remember. Your slippered feet whisper against the steps. The tower rises above the rest of the castle like a crooked finger pointing toward frostbitten stars. At the top, there's a room that no one claims. A chamber not listed on the floor plans. The servants call it the hush. You call it yours. Because sometimes, in the middle of the night, it calls back. At the door, you pause. The air is wrong here. Not colder, emptier. You don't knock. What would be the point? You push the door inward, and it sighs open with the gentleness of something that's been waiting. Inside, nothing moves. Not at first. There's a window, always open, a jagged black square in the moonlight. Snow gathers beneath it like a patient dog. The wind curls in through the gap. But it isn't the wind that speaks. It's the walls. You've run your hands over them before. Smooth, cold stone like everywhere else. But when you press your ear against them, you hear it. Not voices, not really, but memories. Sounds that don't belong to this night. Like a king breathing heavily before a duel. A child sobbing beneath the floorboards. A woman singing in a language no one has spoken in centuries. Once, you heard something that made you stop breathing for nearly a minute. A lullaby your mother used to hum before she died. A song she never taught anyone else. And yet, the wall sang it. Exactly. Note for note. That's when you realized the truth. The castle remembers everything. But only in this tower does it speak back. You lean against the far wall now the way you've done a dozen times before. Close your eyes. Let your head rest against the stone. And listen. Tonight it offers something new. A question. Not in words, but in rhythm. Like a heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. A pause. Then again. Thump, thump, thump. Like a heart that skips every third beat. You whisper aloud, "Who are you?" No answer. But the rhythm continues. And then, not from the wall, but from inside the room, a soft knock. You turn. Nothing there. But the knock came from the door you left open. Except now it's closed. You didn't close it. You approach slow, careful. Place your palm against the wood. Warm. Too warm. You pull your hand back. A sharp hiss escapes your throat. blisters already forming on your fingertips. The door cools instantly. The rhythm stops. The walls fall silent. And you're left alone with a single realization. You didn't come to the tower. The tower called you. And this time it wanted you to remember that. You slip back down the stairs, slower than before. Each step echoes longer now, like the tower doesn't want to let you go. By the time you return to your chamber, the fire has gone out. No embers, no heat, only frost curling at the edge of your bed, delicate as lace, cold as regret. You don't try to rekindle it. Instead, you crawl back beneath the furs, pressing your burned hand to your chest. You wait, listening, but the walls have gone quiet, for now. There's a blanket folded at the foot of your bed. It's always there. No servant remembers placing it. No inventory lists it. And yet every winter, just as the frost begins to bloom on your windows, it appears, neatly folded, heavy, warm, waiting. It doesn't match the others in your chamber. The castle's linens are woven in uniform patterns. Red and gold for the throne rooms, green and cream for the guest wings, deep blue for the chapel chambers. But this blanket is none of those. Its fabric is gray, not the gray of ash or stone, but the deep, secret gray of storm clouds just before they break. And sewn into it, nearly invisible unless you know to look, is a line of black thread winding like a path. No clear pattern, no symbol you recognize, just a meandering stitch that moves across the fabric like it's searching. You never asked where it came from, because part of you doesn't want to know. You pull it up over your chest. The fire is dead. Your hand still throbs where the door burned you. The breath rising from your lips turns white, then vanishes. But beneath the strange blanket, you begin to feel warm. Too warm. Not just body heat, memory heat. Your muscles loosen. Your heart slows. And then you feel something press down. Not from above. From within the blanket itself. It isn't heavy in the way wool is heavy. It's heavy like a presence, like someone curling around you in the dark. You don't open your eyes, because you've learned not to. The first time you did, you saw nothing, but the blanket had shifted, pulled higher than you'd left it, closer to your neck. The second time, you swore you saw an indentation beside you on the mattress. The third time, you woke up with your hand held gently in the folds of the cloth, as if it was cradling you. Tonight, you stay still. You let the warmth take you, because whatever lives inside this blanket, whatever old stitch or spirit or spell, doesn't mean you harm. It's never harmed you. It's just lonely. You know the feeling. You lie there and let it remember with you. Your body sinks deeper into the mattress. The covers don't feel like layers anymore. They feel like walls. Soft, quiet walls. The blanket begins to hum, not with sound, with vibration. A tiny, trembling frequency just under the surface, like the purring of a forgotten beast or the murmur of an old friend trying not to cry. You think of your childhood nurse. She used to hum when she thought you were asleep. Lullabies with no lyrics, just sounds and comfort and time. That's what the blanket hums now. You fall asleep, but your dreams do not belong to you. You dream of a queen buried in the snow, her face blue but peaceful, of a boy hiding from the cold in a ruined stable, clutching something gray around his shoulders, of a seamstress sewing by moonlight, her eyes closed, her fingers bleeding, a black thread running endlessly from her lips into the cloth. And somewhere in the dream, a voice whispers, "I will keep you warm until the stone forgets your name." You wake just before dawn. The frost is gone from the windows. Your breath no longer ghosts in the air. And the blanket, it's folded neatly again at the foot of your bed. exactly where it always is, waiting. You're woken not by the cold this time, but by rhythm. Not music, impact. A hollow, repetitive sound that pulses through the castle floor, like someone hammering their fist against the earth. Thump, thump, thump. It's faint but deliberate. You feel it in your chest more than you hear it. You slip from bed, still wrapped in your blanket of secrets, and pad across the stone floor. There are no guards in the hall, no torches lit, just darkness and that insistent beat. Thump, thump, down the spiral staircase, past the frozen suits of armor, past the portrait gallery, where every painted face seems to be watching, not with disapproval but with warning. It leads you to a door you've never seen before, which shouldn't be possible. You've lived in this castle for years. You've slept in nearly every tower, dined in every hall, hidden in every crypt. But this door? This is new. It's plain oak, reinforced with iron. No symbols, no markings, except a single carving at eye level. Somnium Faber, the dream maker. You hesitate, then press your hand to the latch. The metal is warm. Inside is a narrow chamber lit only by a single oil lamp swinging gently from the ceiling. And beside that lamp, a man, thin as wire, skin like parchment, hair wild and white, eyes dark and too bright. He doesn't look at you, even though he must have heard the door. He just keeps working, on a something. You step closer. It's a model of the castle, but unlike any version you've ever seen. It's alive. Tiny doors swing open and closed. Little fires flicker in chimneys. Miniature shadows move behind stained glass windows. And etched into every inch of the model are hundreds, maybe thousands, of sleeping figures, too small to be real but too detailed to be imagined. Each one curled beneath a different kind of blanket. Each one dreaming. The man speaks without turning. It's the wrong season for sleepwalking, Your Grace. You freeze. He chuckles softly. But you've always been the exception. Even in your cradle, you resisted sleep. Screamed until they carried you down to me. He finally turns to face you. His eyes are red-rimmed and tired. Not cruel. Not mad. Just drained. They think the castle was designed by 5 architects, he says. But that's nonsense. I built every brick of this place myself. He taps his temple. Up here first, then out there. You want to ask who he is, but you already know. You've dreamed of him before, in nightmares of walls shifting shape, of staircases that fold in on themselves, of hallways that double back and trap you forever. He built those, but he also built your favorite window seat in the East Wing, the one that always catches the sun, and the small alcove behind the chapel where you hide to cry. He built the castle to contain, but also to comfort. He turns back to his model. Sleep is an architecture, you know, he murmurs. Some need soft walls, some need chains, and some, like you, need corridors to run through. You step closer. There, in the west tower of the model, is your room. And inside it, you, tiny, detailed, asleep beneath your haunted gray blanket. You see yourself twitch. Your breath catches. I adjust the dreams each night, he says. Reinforce the ones that hold. Break the ones that crack. That's why I can't sleep. You ask him why he bothers. Why not let the castle slumber on its own? He sighs. Because left to its own devices, this place dreams of fire. And you are its heart. You glance again at the model. The figure of you has vanished. In its place, just a patch of scorched wood. He doesn't notice. He's already busy etching something else. You step back slowly. He doesn't stop you. You leave the chamber, heart pounding, feet numb. Back in your bedchamber, The frost has returned. The blanket waits. You crawl under it without question this time. No dreams come, just that steady thump, thump, echoing from somewhere beneath you, somewhere deep in the bones of the stone. The heartbeat of a sleepless architect, still building, still dreaming, still trying to keep the fire out. You wake to darkness so complete, so thick it feels intentional. There's no crack of light beneath the door, no moon filtering through the window, no glow from the coals in the brazier, and worst of all, no torchlight in the hall. You sit up. Even the ever-flickering sconce outside your room, the one you've relied on since childhood, has been snuffed out. Something's wrong. You pull the blanket tighter, not from cold but instinct. Even the air feels heavier, like it's holding its breath. You rise and reach for the taper candle by your bedside. The wick is dry. You strike flint. Nothing. You try again. Still nothing. You know the flint is good. You tested it yesterday. But no matter how many sparks leap from stone to steel, the candle refuses to catch. You fumble your way to the hallway. It's worse there. Even the grand chandelier that always hums with a faint ember light is dead. The castle is unlit, not just dark, unlit as though it's chosen this. You feel your way to the guard post. Empty. No clink of armor. No murmured chatter. Even your footsteps are muffled, like the floor doesn't want to wake whatever sleeps beneath. Then you hear it. Not a scream, not even a whisper, just scraping. A slow, repetitive dragging sound from the far end of the hall. Stone on stone. You freeze. Comes closer. You want to run, but where? Every hall looks the same now, swallowed in black. You turn, hand trailing the wall, and duck into a narrow passage you've used before. A secret route behind the library. It's pitch dark here too, but at least the air doesn't smell burnt, because that's what the hall smelled like the memory of extinguished fire, like a torch snuffed out too fast. You make your way down the narrow corridor, hands shaking. This castle was built to withstand sieges, storms, even plagues, but it was never meant to survive the dark. That's the secret no one tells you. Even kings need fire. You remember a lesson from childhood, a story your nursemaid told one night when the hearth went out. There was a winter so cruel, she whispered. The flames themselves rebelled. Torches refused to burn. Candles withered without melting. Even breath froze before it reached the air. You'd laughed. Then she added, that was the night the kings lit people instead. At the time, you thought she meant metaphorically. You're not so sure anymore. You reach the end of the passage and push open a door. It groans loudly, too loudly. The room you enter is glowing, not from fire, but from something else. A tall iron chandelier swings slightly above you, though every candle in it is cold. The light is coming from the walls, or more precisely from carvings in the walls. Thousands of names, glowing faintly gold, like they've been etched in ember. Your name is one of them. Next to it, a flickering flame icon. Some names are already dark. Some pulse, fast and uneven. Some burn steady. Some are already gone. You don't know what it means, but you do know one thing. The castle is keeping track. Behind you, the scraping stops. A soft sound follows, like a single match being struck. You turn, and in the open doorway stands a figure holding a taper. This flame is tiny, barely clinging to life, but it's real. The figure steps forward and holds it out. You reach slowly, unsure. The moment your fingers touch it, the flame flares, and the entire castle breathes. Light surges through the chandelier. Candles roar to life in their sconces. The brazier in your room reignites from nothing but ash. And somewhere deep below, the architect exhales. You're alone again. The figure is gone, but the taper remains, still warm in your palm. You walk back to your room slowly, heart racing. Your candle burns true now. No one will believe this in the morning, but that's fine, because tonight the fire chose you, and tomorrow, you're not sure if it'll choose you again. Your dreams that night are as brittle as frost. They shatter the moment light returns, but not before you glimpse one last image. A great table, set for a feast, surrounded by empty chairs. Each plate holds only a single thing, ice, carved in the shape of a crown. And every crown is melting. You wake, and for a long time you don't move. Just stare at the ceiling beams overhead, tracing the patterns where frost has crept in through the cracks. It's not even the cold that keeps you still. It's the knowledge that something changed last night. You don't remember walking back to bed. You don't remember sleeping, but you do remember the candle, the names, the scraping sound, and that glowing figure in the doorway. You look at your nightstand. The taper is gone, but a small puddle of wax remains, soft and fresh. It was real, or as real as anything ever is in this castle. The day passes in a strange hush. Servants go about their work quietly, as if they too sensed the unnatural stillness. No one mentions the blackout. No one mentions the missing guards. At lunch, your father, the king, says nothing, but you catch the way his fingers tremble as he lifts his goblet. Just once, a tiny shake, then stillness again. He saw something too. He just won't admit it. That night, you don't even try to sleep. You wait, and when the halls darken again, not dim, but vanish, you're ready. You light a candle. This time it works on the first strike. You leave your chambers with it, the flame barely shielding you from the vast cold rising from the stone floors. You follow your instincts, not your eyes, and your instincts lead you to a part of the castle long sealed off. At least it was sealed. Now the heavy oak doors stand slightly ajar, frost blooming along their iron handles. You step inside. The temperature plummets. It hits your lungs like ice shards, so sharp and sudden you almost drop the candle. But you don't. And in that dim golden light, you see it, the chamber of frozen tears. They don't talk about it in the palace tours. It's not on the blueprints. But you've heard the name whispered before, once by an old nurse, another time by a drunk steward who didn't last the winter. They always said it was too sad to speak of. You step forward. The walls are lined with alcoves, and in each, a small frozen statue kneels in silent agony. Each figure is different. A woman holding a child, a knight gripping his broken sword, a servant clutching a shattered crown. They're not made of ice. Not exactly. They're made of sorrow, preserved in something colder. You can feel it, not just in your skin, but in your ribs, like each figure is pressing its grief directly into your chest. You pass a mirror, fogged with breath that isn't yours. And behind you, just for a moment, your reflection turns to stare at you, lips whispering, "Don't forget us." You spin. Nothing. The reflection is back to normal. But you keep walking deeper into the chamber. At its center is a dais, and on it, a massive slab of frozen water, clear as glass. Inside it, an old man in royal robes. His eyes are open, his hands are lifted, but he's screaming, and no sound escapes. You don't know his name, but you know his title, the last king of the Frost Line. He ruled before your family's bloodline took over. He went mad, they said, wandered into the cold and never returned. Turns out he returned. He just never left this room. At the base of the slab, carved into the ice, I listened to the whispers in the cold. I thought I was a king. I was only a candle. You don't know what that means, but the moment you read it, your candle goes out, and the whispering begins. From every statue, every alcove, every breath of frost in the air. You can't move, but they don't touch you. They just watch, and one by one, their eyes glow faint gold, just like the names on the wall. One voice, clearer than the rest, says, "We all slept cold, but the kings dreamed fire." You bolt. You don't even remember running, but suddenly you're back in your room, hands shaking, candle stub crushed in your fist. The flame didn't follow you this time, but the whisper did. It's in your bones now, and as you curl beneath your heavy furs, you know one thing. Tomorrow you go back, because some chambers shouldn't be forgotten, especially the ones that cry in silence. At dawn, the castle breathes, a slow exhale of mist through its stone lungs. You dress in silence, not because of fear but reverence, the same way you would for a funeral or a coronation. You're not sure which this is yet. The corridor to the frozen chamber is just as you left it. Frost on the hinges, silence in the air, except now something new has appeared, laid carefully before the door like an offering. A tray. On it, a pewter plate, a spoon, and a covered bowl. You lift the lid. Inside, nothing. Not empty space, but a perfect absence. A void that swallows light. The food is missing in a way that feels intentional, as though it was eaten by the air itself. And yet, the spoon is wet. You look closer. Engraved on the underside of the tray. To feed the cold is to become its guest. You take the tray. You enter. The frozen chamber hasn't thawed, but it's shifted. Where the dais stood yesterday, there's now a long wooden table, blackened, cracked, ancient, set for 20, each chair carved in a different motif. Lions, roses, suns, owls, serpents, symbols of royal houses long dead. Each place is set with a pewter plate, a spoon, and a bowl. Every bowl is covered, except yours, the empty one. At the head of the table, the frozen king, still screaming, still silent. And then the others begin to arrive, not through doors, not through walls, but from the cold itself coalescing into form. Translucent figures in royal garb, a queen with icicles hanging from her crown, a prince with frostbitten hands and a torn velvet cloak, a bishop with frozen tears carved into his cheeks. Each takes a seat. None speak, not with voices, but the air around them hums, a pressure that pushes against your mind like wind against a shuttered window. You take your seat. The spoon is warm, too warm. It burns a little as you lift it. One of the ghosts nods, and all at once the lids are removed. Each bowl contains the same thing. Fine, pale, bone white. The nobles begin to eat. Spoons scraping porcelain. No chewing, no swallowing, just motion. You stare into your own bowl. Still empty, still dark. And then you see it. Not ash, not soup, but your reflection. You asleep, in your own bed, breathing shallow, eyes flickering beneath closed lids. You're watching yourself dream. It's how they eat. Whispers a voice beside you. You turn. It's the frozen queen. Only she's not frozen anymore, just cold. They feed on what's left in your sleep. The fears, the aches, the longing. She stirs her ashes gently. Royal blood is the richest. That's why they saved your seat. You feel your body weaken, as though something is being taken. You try to speak, but your voice comes out as a fog. The frozen king finally moves. His eyes roll toward you. His jaw unlocks, and he says, "Do not wake up. Not yet. The feast is not finished." The table begins to hum. The ghosts rise. They don't walk. They drift, circling you. Eyes empty, mouths full of ash. And then, boom, boom, boom. A knock from outside the chamber. Loud, sharp, alive. You turn and see a figure in red, holding a lantern. A servant, one you've never seen before. "Forgive me, Your Grace," they say softly. "It's time for breakfast." And just like that, you're back, sitting in the dining hall. Your plate is full. Your spoon is in your hand. Steam curls from a bowl of real porridge. The servant in red is gone. Your parents are seated beside you, silent as statues. No one eats. Until you do. You lift your spoon. The bowl shimmers. And in its surface, just before you take the first bite, you see ash. You wake up sitting up, not lying down, not curled warmly beneath a blanket or furs. You are upright in the high-backed wooden chair in the corner of your chamber, just where you had once seen a ghostly queen dozing with her eyes open, and your neck aches like you've been that way for hours. Outside, the sun is rising, pale and cold. Inside, the hearth has gone out again, but the embers are warm, and the door is open, only slightly, a few inches, just enough for a voice to enter. And what a voice it is, low, not loud, almost shy. "It's easier," says, "when the castle sleeps back. You don't jump, you don't call for guards, because you've begun to recognize this rhythm. The castle is not a place you live in. It is a dream you move through, a rhythm you drift inside. And somewhere along the way, it started to respond to you, just like you began to respond to it. You step into the hallway. The frost on the stones is shaped like veins now, like roots. They pulse gently beneath your bare feet. You head toward the king's hall, not because someone summoned you, but because the dream requires it. The long corridor is lit by no torches, only the windows, and only every few windows. The sun doesn't touch every glass the same. Some are bright, some are dim, and one is black, not cracked, not broken, just blacked out from the inside. You pause, look through it, and see your chamber, not as it is now, but as it was years ago, when you were just a child. Your first winter in the castle. You're sleeping on the floor because the bed was too big and too cold. You've piled all your clothes into a nest around you. And there, in the dream of the memory, a small shadow tucks the cloak around you tighter. A shadow that looks like your nurse, but is not. She has no face, but she hums the lullaby correctly. You press your hand to the window. The child stirs, but doesn't wake. The shadow looks up and smiles, not with lips, but with the curve of the frost across its blank face. Sleep is when the castle remembers you. It whispers. Even when you try to forget it, you back away. Keep walking. The king's hall is just ahead, but something's changed. The doors are missing, not open, just not there. The archway gapes like a wound in the stone, and inside, nothing. No throne, no courtiers, no frozen king, only snow, thick, fresh snow, a whole field of it. You take one step, it doesn't crunch, it doesn't sink, it accepts you. You walk further in, and the castle begins to breathe again. You hear it in the eaves, the way old houses settle when no one's listening. You see it in the windows, where frost curls and uncurls like exhaled smoke. You feel it in the walls, as your fingers trail across tapestries that shift beneath your touch. And then, at the center of the hall, a bed, huge, round, covered in silks. A canopy hangs above it like clouds caught in spiderwebs. The pillows are stacked like monuments. And seated there, cross-legged and awake, the frozen king. Only, he's not frozen now. Not fully. The ice still clings to his jaw, his elbows. The crown melted into his brow. But his eyes are sharp. He gestures to the bed. You don't argue. You sit across from him. I used to think I ruled the castle, he says, voice like cracking lake ice. But I was only ever its favorite child. You nod, because you understand. It remembers better than I do. He continues. It dreams us more clearly than we dream ourselves. He leans closer. But it never sleeps for long. You ask him why. Because if it ever truly sleeps, it would wake up somewhere else. A chill moves through the room. Not air. Time. Something tilts. You feel your stomach turn. Like when a ship changes course in the fog. The king tilts his head. You're the dream now. He whispers. Not me. And suddenly, the walls vanish. The snow evaporates. The roof tears away into stars. And you are in bed. Your bed. But above the castle. The stone lies beneath you, wrapped in sheets. The spires reach around you like bedposts. And the cold is beneath you now, not inside. You hear a whisper in your pillow. Rest while the castle remembers. And for the first time in days, you sleep without dreaming, but not without being watched. There is no ticking sound in the castle. No mechanical clock, no swinging pendulum, and yet time moves, not like it does in other places, not forward, not entirely backward either. It loops, pauses, it breathes, and somewhere, buried deep in the stone spine of the castle, is something that counts. You wake again. You are in your bed, yes, but everything is slightly older. The wood of the bed frame more worn. The candle by your side melted halfway down. Your boots wet. Your fingers curled as if clutching something in your sleep. But there's nothing there. Just frost clinging to your knuckles. The fireplace is lit, but you didn't light it. And a chair you never moved is now beside your bed. Facing you. Empty. You rise slowly, carefully, because something in the room still sleeps. You don't see it, but you feel its weight, like a cat watching from a beam overhead. You dress in silence. You move in silence. And as you exit your chamber, you whisper, I'll come back, because now you know you must. The hallway is dark again, but it's not frightening anymore. Not entirely. It is like walking through someone else's memory. Or maybe your future memory. At the end of the hallway, a door stands open. Behind it, stone stairs, curling downward. You've never seen these steps before, but your feet remember them. You descend. 1 level, 2, 3, and on the 4th, you hear it. Tick, like ice cracking. Tock, like a drip landing in an empty well. The hallway here is narrow. The frost does not lie on the walls. It grows from them, spidery white veins that reach toward you, gently, curiously. At the end of the hall is a vaulted door, sealed with a wheel of iron. You touch it, and the wheel turns by itself. Inside, the chamber is vast, round, carved not by tools but by time. And in the center of the floor, a clock made of ice. But it does not tick with gears, ticks with breath. Each time someone in the castle exhales, tick. Each time someone dreams, tock. You watch it, fascinated, terrified, because you begin to see things in the ice. Reflections, ghosts, moments. A king crying in the snow, a servant girl hiding in the laundry, a baby sleeping in a crown too large for its head. yourself opening a door that hasn't yet appeared. The clock pulses. "What is this?" You whisper. A voice replies, from the shadows, "This is the part the royals never saw." You turn. There stands a man in a fur cloak, eyes like snow glare. He wears no crown, but he has the bearing of one who once did. "Kings sleep in cold rooms," he says, "but they never feel the cold alone." He gestures to the ice clock. This keeps them linked, one to the next, one dreamer to the next. You ask why. Because the castle doesn't want them to forget. He steps aside, revealing a pedestal. On it sits a small box, sealed with wax. You approach. "Every monarch leaves one dream behind," he says. "Only one. Yours hasn't been chosen yet." You look at the box. You reach out, and suddenly, a loud crack, not from the box, from the clock. A jagged line splits its surface, and the reflections vanish. The air grows cold again. The breath in your throat turns to mist. The figure shouts, "You must leave now," but your fingers are already on the box. It opens, and inside, nothing, not a trinket, not a word, just a folded piece of cloth, soft, faded, your childhood scarf, the one you thought had been lost in the snow years ago. You clutch it, and everything shifts, not violently, but like falling asleep. Your knees give way, your eyes flutter. You fall onto the cold stone. The clock ticks faster, faster, then stops. Silence. When you wake, it's not morning. Not quite, but it's not night either. The air has that soft, grainy stillness, like snow beginning to fall before it actually does. You're not on the stone floor anymore. You're back in the royal bed. But the scarf you found, your scarf, is still in your hand, damp with melted frost and smelling faintly of cloves. The room is utterly silent. No wind, no fire, no ticking. The clock beneath the castle has stopped, and the stillness is so thick it almost feels like pressure in your ears. That's when you hear it. A long, slow inhale, but not from you, not even from someone else. Comes from the walls, from the castle, from the bones of the place. The castle, it seems, is asleep, not in ruins, not dead, just resting. And suddenly it makes perfect sense. All the odd changes, the moving furniture, the lit fireplace you didn't light, the candle that half burned without you watching. You haven't just been wandering through a royal castle. You've been wandering through its dreams. Because what else is memory? What else is a place that repeats itself endlessly, night after night? You rise again, this time without fear. It's not bravery. It's just understanding. The hallway outside your room has changed. It's filled with fog now. Not mist like from the weather, but fog like you'd find on an old photograph. Soft at the edges, grainy, almost warm. You walk through it and each footstep is silent. Even your own heartbeat is strangely muted. At the end of the hallway, the portraits are smiling. Not menacingly, but knowingly. They see you, and they approve. A door you don't remember appears on the left. You hesitate for a moment, just a moment, then open it. Inside is a room full of beds. Simple ones, straw mattresses, faded linens, the kind peasants or servants would sleep in. Except, each bed is labeled, not with names, with titles. The first who froze, the last who ruled, the one who never spoke, the boy with no crown, the queen who died twice, all sleeping, all still, all breathing faintly. You don't feel scared. You feel like a guest arriving late to a gathering. You pass through the room slowly, scarf still in your hand, like a thread connecting you back to yourself. And at the far end of the chamber, a window, frosted, but not quite shut. You push it open, and for the first time in what feels like days, fresh air, sharp and biting, clean, real. Beyond the window, the mountains stretch out like sleeping giants, and below them, the village you passed through on your way here. You can just barely make out the roofs, the plumes of smoke, and somewhere very far away, church bells begin to ring. You turn back to the beds. They haven't stirred, not one, but that's okay. Sleep well, you whisper. I'll carry the rest. And the castle seems to agree. As you pull the window wider and slip through, the stone frame pulses once with warmth. A final heartbeat. Farewell. Not a goodbye, because now you understand. The castle doesn't need to hold its stories anymore. It has passed them to you. A strange, cold, beautiful inheritance. The wind catches your scarf and billows it like a banner behind you as you descend the slope, leaving the dream, but not forgetting it. You're still descending the slope, scarf trailing behind you like a long, quiet whisper. But you're not alone. Someone's walking just ahead. They don't speak, they don't turn, but you recognize them. It's the servant from earlier, the one with the bundle of firewood, the quiet eyes, the half bow. You quicken your step, but the distance never shrinks. Every time you nearly catch up, they veer left, then right down another path, through a gate that wasn't there, around a crumbled statue you're sure you passed already. They're leading you, not away from the castle, but around it, into its back corridors where guests weren't meant to go. Here the stones are warmer, not in temperature, but in use. There are scuff marks from hurried boots, faint stains from candle drips, tiny carved initials at ankle height, too low for royalty. This was their part of the castle, the heartbeat beneath the crown. You step through a crooked archway and into a narrow hall of doors, each one smaller than the last, a servant's wing, but older than most. And here, you begin to hear voices, not loud, just murmurs, pot being scrubbed, someone coughing, the whisper of fabric being folded. You open a door at random. Inside a washroom, steam hangs low in the air, and a woman, middle-aged, apron-wrapped, hair tied back, scrubs a cloth like her life depends on it. She doesn't look up, just says, "We used to sleep here." You wait. She keeps scrubbing. When the frost came through the walls, we'd take turns. One slept, two worked, one stoked the fire. She pauses. There weren't enough blankets, so we'd lie shoulder to shoulder, like matches in a box. You hear her sigh, but it sounds more like memory than regret. It was cold, but no one died. The royals never knew. You open another door. Pantry, dusty now, but once it was warm, smelling of cinnamon and onion and yeast. 3 young boys are seated in a row, backs against the shelves, knees drawn to their chests. The king, one says, he had heated floors. He did not, the second replies. Did too. I saw M lay the stones. Ran hot water through M. Hot water? You're a goat's uncle. The third just laughs. Didn't matter. He still wore 3 cloaks to bed. Still needed a fire on both sides. You want to speak, but something in you says, don't. Let them finish. They begin to fade. Not vanish exactly, but dim like lanterns being slowly turned down. You step out. The corridor stretches endlessly now. Door after door after door. And each one opens to a servant's tale. A maid who tucked lavender into the queen's pillows, hoping it would soothe her dreams. A stable hand who slept in hay beside the royal horses because it was warmer than his own quarters. A cook who roasted apples at midnight, not for the king, but for the guards outside who weren't allowed to shiver. All of them slept poorly. All of them woke early. All of them remembered, because in the castle's frozen nights, it wasn't the royalty who kept it alive. It was them, with their blankets stitched from scraps, with their lullabies hummed while sweeping, with their laughter in corridors too cold to echo. And just before the final door, you find a note pinned to the wall. Handwritten, old, faded, but still legible. When the cold comes through the walls again, let the lords have their silence. We'll dream for them. You smile, not out of joy, but gratitude. The kind that wells up from knowing someone else carried the weight so you didn't have to. You close the last door gently, and behind it, silence again. Except now it feels earned. Like the castle is resting at last. Not because it's tired, but because the memory has been passed on. To you. You're moving upward again. Not running. Not wandering. Climbing. Through a stairwell so narrow your elbows brush cold stone with every step. The air gets tighter. Not colder. Just heavier. Like breathing through layers of silk. You're heading toward the royal bedchamber. Not the guest rooms. Not the children's quarters. The king's chamber. You reach the landing and pause. The door is heavy oak, metal-banded, with a single carved emblem at its center. A lion asleep, one paw raised, as if even in dreams it ruled. You push the door. It doesn't creak. Kings don't tolerate creaks. Inside, the room opens wide. You expect opulence. Gold, crimson, velvet, something extra. But no. Spare. Not poor, just restrained. The bed dominates the space. Tall, curtained, with furs piled like fallen clouds. You half expect it to roar. And next to it, a smaller bed. Not for a queen, not a child, but a sleeper's servant. Someone whose sole job was to monitor the king's rest, to add a log to the fire, fetch warmed wine, listen for coughing. Sleep here wasn't a private matter. It was a performance. The king's health meant the kingdom's health. If he slept poorly, so did the crops. If he dreamed of blood, someone would be blamed. There's a scroll beside the bed. You unroll it. It's not a royal decree. It's a sleep log. Neat columns mark. Entry time. Quality of sleep. Bodily noises. Yes, even those. Temperature of the bed. Number of times the king woke. His mood upon waking. You skim the entries. Winter's 4th week. His Majesty roused thrice. Blamed owl. 5th week. Slept soundly. Credited elderflower wine. 7th week. Disturbed. Dreamt of fire. Chamber swept for signs of hex. You chuckle. Then pause. Because one entry is different. It reads, 10th week. Did not wake. Did not stir. Hands cold. Face pale. Physician summoned. Then, in smaller ink, we stoked the fire until dawn, hoping it was merely sleep. You feel your pulse slow. Suddenly, the room feels colder. Not because of ghosts, but because of expectation. This was not a place for rest. It was a throne disguised as a bed. Even asleep, the king wore a crown in spirit. Decisions clung to him like frost to a window. You move to the fireplace. Ashes. No fire. But you crouch and brush the soot aside. There, faint but unmistakable, is a brand mark on the hearthstone. A single word, in Latin, vigilare, to stay awake. Even in slumber they were watched, and they knew it. The guards outside the door rotated every 2 hours, lest one drift. A scribe slept in a nearby room, ready to record any word muttered in dreams. Even the silence here had eyewitnesses, and yet Some nights they must have cracked. You imagine a king throwing off the covers, pacing barefoot, whispering to the tapestry, "What if I dream of drowning again?" Or waking with a start, clutching his throat, shouting, "Was I asleep or poisoned?" Royalty was never fully asleep, only paused. So tonight, as you stand beside that tall bed, you begin to realize something. The king didn't just sleep here. He feared sleep here, because what if dreams made him common? What if nightmares were the only part of him that couldn't be governed? You lie back, just for a moment. The furs are heavy. They smell of cedar oil, wool, and something sharper, like bitterness. And as your eyes adjust to the high ceiling, you see it. Stars, painted, not bright, not gold, just a dusty constellation of pale dots. A map, as if someone long ago decided that if a king must drift into sleep, he should at least know where he's going. You close your eyes. You don't feel royal. You don't feel powerful. But you feel the weight of duty, of legacy, of the silence that can only fall in a room where thousands once whispered. And for just a second, you understand why some kings begged never to sleep alone. The candlelight flickers. You're still lying in the king's bed, just for a second, just to feel. And then, a breeze. It's not strong, but it's wrong. The fire's gone out, yes, but the window is sealed. You saw it bolted shut with thick lead. So how? You sit up. The air around you feels dense, like it's soaked in cold, like we're dipped in night. And then, the sound. Clink, metal, faint, rhythmic. You rise, step by step across the furs. Barefoot now, each step colder than the last. You pass the servant's bed, empty, but still indented. Someone slept there recently, or something still does. You follow the sound. Clink. You reach the wall. There's a small door, hidden, behind a tapestry of St. George. Not slaying a dragon this time, but laying down his sword to rest. You pull it open. A stone passage, narrower than before, steeper, descending this time. You hesitate, but only for a moment. The walls are weeping. Moisture drips from above, as though the castle itself remembers rain. And down here, it's cold, not chilly, not wintry, but ancient, a kind of king's cold, the kind that isn't weather, but punishment. At the bottom, another chamber, no light, yet you see, not with your eyes, but with the memory of every stone. You know where you are, the vault of sleep, a room few ever entered, where crowns were kept when kings died, and where their pillows were burned, because even their dreams, they believed, could become cursed if left behind. You approach the center. There's a stone bed, no mattress, no furs, just a crown, frozen to the slab. You reach out. Your fingers don't touch it. They don't dare, but they feel what it holds. Loneliness, pressure, 1,000 whispers echoing. Don't close your eyes. This is where the last winter king slept. Not in peace, not in ceremony, but down here, beneath stone and frost and watchful walls, because they feared what he might say in his dreams. The castle will fall. I saw the sun rise red. My son will betray me. Prophecies, real or fevered, were dangerous. So they put him here. No one to hear, no one to record. They froze his sleep. They locked away his final night. And yet, he dreamed. You know this, because carved above the slab, in jagged lines, barely legible, are the final words of a dying king. Even in ice I saw fire, and it spoke my name. You step back, suddenly aware your breath is misting. The cold isn't metaphor anymore. You turn. But before you leave, you glance once more at the crown. Still frozen, still waiting, and for a moment, you hear it clink, not from metal, but from something deeper, like a chain, being dropped in water. There's snow now. You didn't see it fall. You didn't hear it collect. But when you open the hidden door behind St. George, you step directly into it, knee-deep, dry, crackling like crushed bone underfoot. The hallway you came from? Gone. Or rather, never there. The cold has shifted. It's not biting anymore. It's observing. You feel it like eyes, not on your face, but on your thoughts. And then, the bells begin. Not church bells, not alarm bells, not wedding bells, but thin, glass-like, tink, tink, as if someone were plucking icicles from a harp. The snow thickens. Each flake is distinct and shaped like a symbol, a lion, a crown, a sword pierced by a feather. You know the snow is not weather. It's memory, falling slowly from a sky you can't see. You walk forward. There's only one direction now. The bells grow louder. They're everywhere, but no one rings them until you see her, a figure in white, not a ghost, but not quite present either. She's walking in the same direction as you, holding something in her hands, a small box, covered in frost, etched with gold. She stops, turns. You recognize her, the queen who died in childbirth, the one they said cursed the royal nursery with her final breath. But she doesn't look cruel. She looks tired. She speaks, but the words are wind. Still, you understand. He never wanted the crown, she says, but it was too cold to say no. Then she fades, and the snow pulls her away like a silk curtain being drawn back. You reach the chapel, not the grand one. This is the winter chapel, built only for the cold months, when the stone walls cried, and the priest spoke with trembling hands. Inside, dozens of bells, hanging from threads made of hair, each with a name burned into its base. You walk among them. Some are royal, some are forgotten, but all once dreamt inside these castle walls. And now, they ring only when someone remembers. You hear one, tink, and you suddenly remember a lullaby, one you never learned, but one your bones know. Sleep, sleep where no flame burns. Under crowns the frost returns. You sit. The chapel floor is warm, somehow. The only warmth you've felt in days. And then, another bell. Tink, it's yours. You look up, and you see your own name, glowing faintly, on a bell, no bigger than your thumb. How long has it been here? How long have you been here? You close your eyes. Now, it's not just cold. It's quiet. Even the bells hush, like the castle is holding its breath. You're not dreaming. You're becoming the dream, like so many kings and queens before you. Behind the fireplaces, you've seen hundreds of them by now, some grand, some forgotten. In feast halls, cloisters, bedchambers, always crackling, always dancing. But what you never asked is, where does the heat go? Because this castle, as you know too well by now, stays cold. So tonight you investigate. You step behind the largest hearth, one still glowing faintly from a forgotten log. The soot-stained stones part like old ribs, and behind it, a crawl space. You slide in sideways. The brick is warm, yes, but only for the first few feet. Then, hollow, you descend. By now, your knees have forgotten what softness means. Your fingers are pink with cold again. Your breath smokes like a dragon in mourning. You expected ducts, shafts, some clever medieval ventilation. Instead, rooms, whole chambers, built inside chimneys. smoke blackened, insulated with straw and waxed parchment. You duck into one and realize what it is: a sleeping cell. No bed, just a cradle of bricks. And in the corner, a bundle of fabric. You touch it. Crumbles. Cloth? No, hair. Coiled and knotted, like it was twisted into ropes. This wasn't a guest room. This was a prison. You pass 5 more like it, each a little different. One has a collection of dolls, wooden, faceless, arranged in a circle. Another is padded with torn book pages. You read one, and if the air survives the frost, they may yet inherit the hush. Another is completely coated in wax, from floor to ceiling. A single taper sits in the center, lit, but the flame doesn't flicker. And then, at the very bottom, a door, metal, far too modern for the rest of this place. You press your hand against it. Warm, not just warm, pulsing. You open it. Inside, a single throne, but no one's sitting in it. Instead, there's a bed, carved from ice, veined with gold, and tucked beneath the fur covers, a figure, not sleeping, not breathing, just resting, with eyes open, watching you. They look familiar, not from portraits or coins, from mirrors. You blink, they blink. You speak, they mouth the same words, but there's no echo, only stillness. Above the bed, carved into the ice canopy, the one who finds the fireplace never needed it. You try to back away, but your legs are numb. Your body frozen? No, not ice. Recognition. This is not a punishment. This is your room, the one you've been walking toward all night, all life. You sit. The bed molds to your shape, welcoming, and for the first time, you feel it. Warmth, not from flames, but from remembrance. You hear a voice, not loud, not soft, just right. Rest now. They will dream of you as you dreamed of them. And with that, you sleep. The snow that never fell takes you a while to notice, because the silence is heavy and the air is still. But then your skin catches it, that soft prickling, like being stared at by the weather. You open your eyes. The bed is gone. The ice, gone. No door, no room, no castle. You're standing in the middle of a white plain. But it's not snow. It's something else. Something wrong. It doesn't crunch. It doesn't melt. You kneel. Scoop a handful. It's cold, yes, but too dry. Each flake is folded. Delicately, like parchment. You unfold one. A word inside. Forgiven. Another. Forgotten. Another. Frozen. You blink. And suddenly it's falling again. The snow that never fell. It's snowing upward. Little slips of paper drifting into the sky. You tilt your head back. Far above, there's a castle suspended in the clouds. Not made of stone, but made of sleep. You recognize the turrets, the towers, the exact silhouette of the castle you've been crawling through all night. But lighter now, weightless. And you're rising. The snow lifting you with each flake that touches your skin. You try to resist, but there's nothing to push against. No ground, only memory. You reach the gates. They open with no hands. And inside, rooms you've never seen. Rooms no one living ever found. A library made of dreams. A corridor of lullabies. A banquet hall filled with empty thrones. Each seat warmed as if someone had just left. And finally, the nursery, not for babies, but for the idea of sleep. Cribs of iron and velvet, blankets stitched with starlight. And in the very center, a music box is not playing. You wind it, but there's no key. Instead, your finger fits the mechanism. And when you turn, the room hums. softly, like a lullaby sung underwater. And then, a voice, not yours, not mine, but someone you loved, long, long ago. Time to sleep, darling. You're safe now. You've wandered long enough. You want to ask where you are, what this is, if you've died. But the voice interrupts again, gently. No more questions, just rest. You lie down in one of the cribs. It's absurd, you're far too big. But the crib grows with you, becomes a bed, a room, a world. You close your eyes, and in the darkness behind your eyelids you see it. The snow that never fell, falling for someone else now. Another wanderer, another soul, another night. Let them sleep like kings. Let them dream like peasants. Let them wake like no one ever has. And you smile, because you know, you will never wake up, but you will always be dreaming. You stir, but not because something is wrong, because something is shifting. The bed beneath you breathes, not metaphorically. It actually inhales, its wooden frame expanding ever so slightly, the mattress rising like a chest drawing in air. You freeze, because beds aren't supposed to do that. Then again, neither are castles. And this one's alive now. You glance around. The nursery you once drifted into is gone. Now you're in a narrow chamber, windowless, candlelit. Heavy stone arches curve over your head, but they're dripping, not water, wax, thick, golden trails of it, like tears from unseen eyes. Each droplet hisses as it lands on the floor, not because it burns, but because the stone tries to reject it, like it knows this wax doesn't belong. And the bed, still breathing, slow, deep, meditative. Each inhale draws you down, as if the mattress is remembering you, sinking you into its old velvet lungs. You clutch the bedposts, but they're soft, padded, pliable, like meat dressed as wood. Not grotesque, just wrong, and familiar, because suddenly you remember this wasn't the king's room, it was his brother's, the one nobody mentions, the one who never ruled, because he never woke up. He was born asleep, they said, never cried, never fed, just lay in this very room, day after day, breathing like the world owed him silence. And when he died, no one could tell, because how do you know when someone like that stops sleeping? You glance to the side. The wall beside your bed is breathing too, in sync with you, in like lungs pressed into the stone. And between those breaths, you hear something knocking from behind it, rhythmic, polite, as if it doesn't want to wake you too quickly. You slip out of bed. Your feet find the floor, but it isn't cold. It's warm, like someone was just standing there, waiting. You walk toward the wall, following the knock. The wax on the ceiling starts dripping faster. The room darkens, and then you see it, a tiny door cut into the wall no taller than your knee, etched with symbols you half recognize. A sleeping lion, a candle snuffed in reverse, a child wearing a crown inside out, and just above the handle, a brass plaque. You lean in to read it. It says, "Do not enter unless you've already dreamed your way out." You hesitate, because honestly, that sounds like a trap. But this whole night's been a trap, hasn't it? And you've sprung every single one. So you do what any royal dreamer might do. You knock, once, twice. The door opens a crack. Not pushed, just persuaded. Inside, a ladder, carved from bones. Smooth, old, familiar. You climb, and as your hands grip each rung, the bedroom below begins to hum. A lullaby in reverse. Not music, but unmusic. Like silence being stitched back together. Like someone undoing a dream. The higher you climb, the younger you feel, your hands smaller, your knees less certain, your heart louder. And when you reach the top, you emerge not into a room, but into a reflection, your own room, where you started. Same bed, same sheets, same ceiling crack shaped like a wolf. But the air? Heavy with memory. You're not sure if you're back, or just somewhere pretending to be back. But for now, it doesn't matter. You crawl into bed, again, and wait, because that knock is still coming. But now, it's from inside the walls of this new room too. And you've got one more room left before dawn. And it's the one no king has ever entered. Awake. You close your eyes, not because you're tired, but because you have to. It's the price of admission. The knock has grown slower, deeper, as if it's waiting for you to become something softer, something sleep-shaped. You lie still, and just as the moment between waking and dreaming begins to fray, the wall opens. Not a door this time, just opens, like the stone remembers a time it was fabric. A hand reaches through. It's not skeletal, not monstrous, just impossibly old. Its fingers trail stars in the air, not light but memories, each one a flicker of rooms long buried. One where a queen wept into a pillow no one could hear. One where a prince hid under his bed from a crown-shaped shadow. One where a chambermaid watched the frost bloom across her final breath. And then, your room, not the one you're in, the one you lost, the one before dreams, before memory, before you. The hand beckons. You follow. Inside, the world isn't dark. It's blank, as if it hasn't decided what to be yet. The floor is made of unspoken sentences. The air smells like stories that almost happened. And in the center, a bed. Not royal, not grand, just final. The sheets are folded with eerie care. Its pillow stitched with the same sigil from before. A lion curled inward, sleeping through its own roar. You approach, and the bed shifts, not to welcome you, but to warn you. It knows. This is the last room. There are no other doors behind it. No ladders. No passageways. Just this. The end of sleep. But before you lie down, you notice something tucked under the bed. A mask. Wooden, simple, carved from you. No eye holes. Just a smooth surface. And a single word burned into the grain. Remember. You lift it. It's heavier than it looks, and warm. You place it over your face, and the moment it touches you, you're not in the room anymore. You're everywhere you've ever slept. The cradle, the cellar, the ship's hold, the battlefield tent, the stone bench in the monastery garden, the fur-lined royal chamber, the kitchen floor during a storm, every bed, every breath. Every version of you that ever closed its eyes now lies down in unison and exhales. And then, stillness. Not sleep, not death, just the kind of peace that only comes when there are no more rooms left to check. You did it. You made it through. You slept like a king in every cold, haunted, and sacred place that ever dared call itself a bed. And now you rise, but not as yourself, as something older, quieter, and very, very awake.